It's another day, another series of companies being added to this list. As you mentioned, Alex, it's basically a list by the US government that says these Chinese companies are working in collaboration with the Chinese military. And although it doesn't apply sanctions on those companies, it will make it awkward for US companies to do business with them. And as you mentioned, we've had some new additions. Uh, Tencent, probably one of the best known internet companies in China, and best known for its apps and its gaming, for example. Not known to be in the military civil fusion space, but has been added to the list nonetheless. And some of the hawks in DC have been calling for that to happen. CATL, which makes the batteries for the big EV car makers, including Tesla. That's gone on the list with potential ramifications for the supply chain story there. There's also a shipping company, Costco, and some other big, well-known Chinese companies as well. Now, of course, the Chinese authorities in Beijing have responded. They say they hope the US will undo this wrongdoing. And of course, we know China has options of retaliation of its own. They've been expanding their own kind of so-called entity lists as well. So it's just another example of the ongoing tensions between both and the tit for tat between both governments as well.
I mean, will the government undo this on January 20th?
Well, it's a tricky one because you would assume the incoming Trump administration are as hawkish as the Biden administration, if not more hawkish. You know, everyone's trying to out-hawk each other on China at the moment, Alex. So I don't know whether or not there will be a reversal. Obviously, there's a complication there with CATL being so critical to the Tesla supply chain. So that will be one worth keeping a close eye on. But broadly speaking, though, you'd have to say the direction of travel when it comes to export controls or investment restrictions or potentially tariffs on goods made in China, coming from China into the US, and curbs on doing business and people flowing the like, that's all been going in one direction. So the Biden administration seems to be cementing its own hawkish legacy, putting its own stamp on this before they finish up. And it's kind of hard to imagine too much of this being unwound by the Trump administration.
So I guess then the obvious question is who's next? And I don't know if we know that, right? Like you mentioned Tencent, like that was kind of a surprise over the last 24 hours. But sector-wise, company-wise, market cap-wise, who do we think might be next?
Well, it is hard to say, Alex, because like you say, we've gone now from, if you might say, maybe obvious companies who you could say are clearly aiding or where the US doesn't want to aid China's technology aspirations, its chip aspirations, its AI aspirations to companies that aren't necessarily in that space. So certainly it's been broadened now. That list looks like it's been broadened. So, you know, it could go anywhere from here. But the real question is, when the Trump administration comes in a couple of weeks' time, what will their initial focus be? Will it be on goods trade? Will they go hard with the tariffs, which the President-elect Trump has obviously spoken about so many times, or will they get off to an early start also with ongoing investment restrictions, export controls, restrictions on technology and the like? And if it's that, then that's where we will see this list coming under more scrutiny again in terms of where they do go with it.
Any response from China in terms of how they retaliate in this particular kind of instance?
They had, well, the foreign ministry overnight did respond to say that, look, they obviously disagree with this. They want the US to undo it. They refer to it as wrongdoing. But we know that China does have options to retaliate. They've developed something of an entity list of their own, Alex, where they're putting US companies on their list, where they're making it harder to do business with Chinese companies, putting restrictions on the flow of, say, critical minerals, resources, that kind of thing that US companies might need. So China has options to respond where they are in this space. But there's also been some mixed mood music coming out of Beijing. They've been saying that when it comes to goods trade, at least, that they're open to listening. There could be some negotiation or deal to be done on that side of things, and I think that's why this China-US trade story is going to be very much an evolving one as the new administration gets up and running.